Based on the above, the committee concludes that there was substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz violated House rules and state and federal laws and other standards of conduct prohibiting prostitution, statutory rape, illicit drug use, acceptance of impermissible gifts, the provision of special favors and privileges, and, for good measure, obstruction of Congress. Violated House rules and state and federal laws prohibiting prostitution, illicit drug use, statutory rape. The House Ethics Report on Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz that was released today, which immediately raised some questions like, given all the evidence that the ethics investigation turned up, how did he avoid getting criminally indicted? Also, given roughly 330 million people to choose from in this country, what does it say about a person's judgment if they survey the 330 million people of this country and decide that this guy's the best one? This is the best pick in the country to be Attorney General of the United States. State and federal laws prohibiting prostitution, illicit drug use, and statutory rape. Now, while Congressman Gaetz denies all wrongdoing, I think it's beyond inarguable that he has sort of a special place in the Trump transition and will for all history. Donald Trump's transition to his second term in office has been a series of humiliations and failures, but none worse than choosing this particular person to be Attorney General. A prospect that lasted 8 days and then collapsed. And during that time, the president-elect himself reportedly called U.S. senators and lobbied them to approve this choice, vouching for the guy, telling senators they needed to support him, putting his own political capital into the game. The vice president-elect personally, physically brought this guy in and out of senators' offices, putting his own credibility, his own political capital on the line to vouch for this guy and get this guy approved. Multiple Republican senators went on the record indicating, oh, yes, absolutely, I'll vote for this guy for Attorney General. Sure, why not? That's my best judgment. Hi, Lindsey Graham. Hi, Tommy Tuberville. Hi, Bill Haggerty. Aren't you glad you took the humiliating reputational hit to vouch for Matt Gaetz, given that just days later he dropped out, and now we've got the Ethics Committee accusing him officially of statutory rape and prostitution and lots of drug use, including him allegedly setting up a fake email address in his congressional office that he specifically used to score pot. Was that worth it for you? Do you want to do it again? Don't forget all the congressional Republicans who went on the record and voted to make sure that this information would be kept secret, so Matt Gaetz could have a chance of becoming Attorney General of the United States without the public ever finding out all the evidence that Congress collected about, again, statutory rape, prostitution, drug use, etc. That includes the very, very, very pious, biblically guided Speaker of the House, who went out in public and strenuously argued that the American public should not be allowed to know the evidence that the House had collected about Matt Gaetz. And the American public should not be allowed to see that evidence so Matt Gaetz could become Attorney General. Without anybody knowing about what we now know is the Ethics Committee's conclusions that there is substantial evidence that Matt Gaetz broke all these laws, including, you know, the ones about grown men not having sex with children. The deeply pious House Speaker insists that that information must be kept secret from the American people so that Matt Gaetz can become Attorney General of the United States. House Speaker Mike Johnson, how do you feel about putting your reputation in this particular dumpster? Would you do it again? Because you're going to be asked to do it again. How do you feel about being asked to put your reputation in this particular dumpster, given that the Gaetz nomination was withdrawn just days later? So you did it for nothing. The Trump transition has been a 20-car pileup of errors and humiliations that reflect poorly on Trump as the decision maker at the top, but that have also inflicted political harm and humiliation on lots of other Republicans who his errors have messed with, including his own vice president and all the senators and all the Republican members of the House who he made go to bat for Matt Gaetz. All this after an election in which Democrats gained a couple of seats and Republicans lost ground in the House, which means Republicans' margin for getting anything passed in the House is now smaller than at any time in the past century. And now, on top of all that, as what we expect to be his last act, presumably before Christmas, we just had transition Trump run the Republican-controlled House right up to the precipice of another government shutdown, the closest we have been to a government shutdown since the last time Trump was president. I mean, Trump has made a lot of errors and unforced, humiliating own goals in this transition. And I think the media should cover it more that way. The idea that this is a normal transition, this hasn't just been gaffe after gaffe and own goal after own goal and reputational harm after reputational harm. Trump not only tanking his own political capital, but just sideswiping every other powerful Republican in Washington while he is doing it as he mishandles all of these nominations. It has been a terrible, shambolic transition. But on top of everything else that he has done with all of these nominations and the way he has mishandled them, the brush with a government shutdown this weekend made Trump look not just error-prone and easily confused, but also weak. The whole drama over whether or not to shut down the government, you'll remember, was not started by Trump. It was started by eccentric right-wing billionaire Elon Musk, who posted online over 150 times about the funding bill to keep the government running, stating lots of things about it that were definitely not true, insisting in increasingly vociferous terms that Republicans needed to tank that bill and not fund the government and shut everything down. It was only after Musk had gotten the ball rolling that Trump eventually joined in. Once Trump got involved, he did start making demands from the Republican-controlled Congress, telling them what he wanted from them as he was pushing them toward a shutdown. What did he want them to give him? He wanted a very specific thing that he asked for explicitly. He wanted the Republican-controlled Congress to abolish the debt ceiling. Don't worry, though. You don't have to bother reminding yourself what the debt ceiling is because they didn't do it. Trump wanted it, he demanded it, but he didn't get it. They didn't make any change around the debt ceiling, even though that's what Trump was demanding, which makes him look, again, error-prone, easily confused, and weak. It particularly makes him look weak compared to Elon Musk, because what did result from the standoff that nearly shut down the government this weekend, what actually did change, is not what would have benefited Trump, is not what Trump asked for. It's not the debt ceiling thing. Instead, it's what would have benefited Elon Musk. Because what they did remove from the government funding bill was a provision that would have screened and regulated U.S. investments in China. And those new rules could have interfered with Musk's reported plans to build yet another massive manufacturing plant in China, right down the street from the largest Tesla factory on Earth, which he has already built in Shanghai. Because USA, USA, USA. As David Dayen put it at the American Prospect this weekend, quote, "This is the first scandal of the second Trump term. And take a long look, because it's going to look like all the other scandals. This is going to be a constant theme of the next 4 years. Personal business interests are going to constantly take precedence over governance in the Trump-Musk White House. The word for this is oligarchy, and oligarchs do not think about the country first." Luckily, they've already taken integrity off the coat of arms, just sandblasted it right off of there. So we don't have to do it ourselves. We are starting the holidays in the midst of a presidential transition that really has been a shambolic mess, and it should be covered as such. But on top of all of those mistakes, we are now seeing the first signs that the errors and the own goals and the self-inflicted humiliations of this nascent presidency, they may reflect a new president who is not just incompetent, who is not just bad at the basics of what it takes to appoint people to jobs and run a transition, we may be seeing the first signs of a new president who is weak enough not just to fail, but to be taken advantage of by some of the brighter bulbs on the tree.